Hello everyone, happy little Tuesday. Well, it's not so happy for our poor friends in Nashville, but thank God we've heard from most of them and they're all safe, and our thoughts are with you, of course. It's Tuesday, it's what they call Super Tuesday, voting all over the place in America.
Get out and vote.
Get out and vote, yeah, and if you don't vote, then don't grumble about who gets in and who doesn't, okay? A lot of people suffered a great deal to get the vote, so don't waste it. I mailed mine, actually, and mailed Ruth's and Martin's. And I actually got an acknowledgement this year saying, we have received your vote and this has been recorded. Now, that's never happened before. They probably recorded it and then lost it. We shall see. By tomorrow, we'll all know a lot more. But, you know, to be honest, with all the chaos that's going on and the false news, like this morning, I've seen totally conflicting news about Nashville. Some say polling places are demolished, others say voting stations are all open. So what is fake news? You know, what isn't? But that's life today, isn't it? So let's talk about something a bit more cheerful. Ruth and Martin attended a lovely event in Riverside. It was the Red Dress Fashion Show. It was it was run by the medical people of that area to raise awareness about heart conditions in women and in support of the whole health benefits.
Not the homeless, the health.
Not the homeless, the health.
You got it.
Yeah, it's the lemonade, you know, that's
Yeah,
making
you might want to refresh that.
Oh, by the way, a little cookie from our guest today, Dr. Michele. She'll be here in a moment. She was a few minutes on the late side because she was waiting for the cookies to come out of her oven. Now, how about that then? Let that be a lesson to all my future guests. She came bearing gifts, didn't she? Hot cookies out of her oven, because she only lives 2 doors away. So the commute wasn't the problem. It was the baking time. However, where was I? Oh, I've no idea where I am. It's
You're
Tuesday.
90, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Rose says it's 90, so it doesn't matter. So it's to be able to get away with crap. Did I
That's one. That's one.
There's a gentleman in Liverpool who's got a machine called the crapometer, and he records it every time I say crap. So are you watching, Dave?
Are you watching, Mark Lindsay? Please
Mark Lindsay,
write it down.
Of course. Why aren't you on a cruise, Mark? What's the matter with you, slouch? Every time Mark writes to us, he has this wonderful place in Tennessee.
You've got
Texas.
Have I really?
Yeah, I'm going to get you a napkin.
Mark Lindsay goes on cruises, but when he isn't cruising, he has a lovely white beard and he puts little coloured beads and even little bulbs in it at Christmas time. Lovely person.
Okay, I'm going to clean you up.
Oh God, here's my stylist. Hold on, Mum.
If it would just stop yakking long enough.
Why wouldn't you?
Dear God in heaven. Edgar.
Do you think the Kardashians have this problem?
Edgar Santos would have a heart attack.
Oh,
so you like this. Okay, all right, you can carry on yakking, but not too long because I want to get our fabulous guest
All
on.
right, fine, yes. But we've just had the pleasure of a house guest. Dick Black has been here again from Memphis, and he had a few business meetings and 1 or 2 gigs to do, so it was lovely to have him. And he flew home through a lovely storm last night, but I believe he's doing well and he'll be back here soon to do some more gigs at the Mint and other places, so I'll let you all know about it because I know the ladies love him. The guys like him too, so he must be all right. And after he'd gone and we'd done his laundry, I found 1 sock in the dryer this morning.
Hashtag rockstar socks.
Rockstar sock. It wasn't underpants, but I mean, that's another story.
No, that was the time when you had Jimi Hendrix.
I've had Jimi Hendrix's, yeah, but not in this washing machine. That was in Liverpool. Well, Eswell, actually. But I'm digressing. Ruth pushing my notes up here hard to get me. But yeah, Sunday afternoon we went to see our lovely German friend, the sax player, Katja, who was at Gulp Restaurant in Playa Vista. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at the light instead of the camera. You know what?
Well, then let's stop looking at the light. At your age, that...
Oh, yes, don't be looking into the light. Anyway, listen, let me get to the whole point of today and introduce our lovely guest, Dr. Michele.
Hey, the crowd goes wild.
The crowd goes wild. Come on, Michele. Thank you so much for the cookies.
Oh, my
That's how
pleasure.
all the trouble started.
Well, sugar for the sugar.
Thank you, darling.
Oh, darling.
Pity it's not my week for girls, but never mind.
Oh my! Ba-dum-bum.
But
She went there.
I
All
know
right.
she did. So, Ruth,
I'm muscling in because I'm your biggest
Please.
fan.
Oh, thank you, Ruth.
I think we're all each other's biggest
Yes.
fans, aren't we?
It's been delightful. On Tuesday, your episode airs of the She Built It podcast with Melanie and Dr. Michele, and you were phenomenal. You both are just, as you know, they are tremendously interesting, dynamic, inspiring women with great stories.
You're not getting
Truly,
out of here
truly.
today. I'm trying to hang on to you.
No,
Yeah.
I am so blessed to have you all as our guests separately,
Thank you.
because even 2 separate episodes wasn't enough for all of you.
We could make it Angie and Ruth the series.
Exactly.
See if we can get on Netflix. They have all sorts of weird stuff on there, as we know. So let's get to the point.
Yes.
Please tell us.
Well, so Dr. Michele sent us, as our guests do, sent us her bio. And I opened this PDF and it opens on the side with all the pages. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I've lived next to this goddess for like over a decade. And I didn't know she had a bio that's 30 pages
30
long.
pages long. Mine's about half a page, actually.
Mine's quarter of a page. It's got 3 typos.
I didn't find any typos in it either. No,
I'm
not
a
really.
little A type A, so yeah, you won't find typos in my work.
Oh, surely good. Oh, we'll have to send her some of our stuff to prove.
So tell us, with all, obviously doctor and PhD in clinical psychology,
Yes.
and big names like Johns Hopkins and UCLA,
Yeah.
when you were, how old were you when you suddenly thought, okay, that's my path, that's my vision, that's what I'm going to do?
Good question. So I was actually 10 years old when I decided I wanted to be a child psychologist, because my parents were really conversational with us, and they respected, there are 3 of us, I'm in the middle, I'm the middle child, so there is a bit of a syndrome. But they would really treat us with great respect, and we'd have family discussions about big decisions. And I realized that not all kids had somebody who really listened to them, and they were marginalized and needed a voice who really cared and invested in them for their health and well-being. So 2 of my parents' friends separately were women who were psychologists who worked with kids. One had a practice in her home and had children of her own, and the other one had a private practice. And I thought, I interviewed them at 10. And I said, what is it that you
Late
do?
starter. Late bloomer.
Well, you were 11 when a lot of things happened to you, so we know that. But it motivated me early, so I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. But then going from undergrad to graduate school, I really didn't know what kind. And so I specialized in clinical psychology so I could treat people individually to help them become their best selves. But I also learned that I knew I had a passion for being a family mother and wife, and I needed to choose a career that afforded flexibility, and so academia was that. So I could be a professor and see patients and do research and set my schedule basically outside of teaching classes.
And bake cookies.
And bake cookies, yeah, I know. I've been baking since I was 5. I baked my first bread by myself when I was
aren't
7.
you embarrassed now,
yeah.
Chef Ruth?
Yeah.
Totally humiliated. I might have to move house now.
Well, come and
That
eat,
doesn't
because
make
my
it.
kids just don't want all my food anymore. They just,
Well,
everybody's...
you know where to bring it. We accept food parcels.
We'll come to your house and drink Mrs. McCartney's wine and cookies. See, that works. Cheers.
Mrs.
Exactly.
McCartney's, you brought... You guys, this was so sweet.
No, well, when you're a guest on the She Built It podcast, you get one of these fabulous cups, which of course Dr. Michele has water in hers. I can't promise what's
What Mummy has.
I'm not going to
There's
smell
ice
it. I
cubes
might
in it.
unintelligible. I know.
She might psychoanalyze us. No boy.
Well, that's going to
what you
take
want
that's going to take more than a half-hour show. Let me tell you. So, how would you say you divide your time between all of these things?
I think one of the important things was to recognize that in terms of women, our lives, our careers run 30, 40, maybe 50 years, in your case, 60, 70. And we need to realize that maybe we can't do everything at the same time, but we can do it in stages. So before I had kids, I mean, I was a workaholic. I mean, truly. And that's where you see in my curriculum vitae so much of the work that set the foundation for me to be able to do, hit a pace and have a rhythm. And then I had kids. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to work less so that I could spend more time with my kids, and then ramp up as they became less needy of me.
Okay.
So it's about sequencing and recognizing that there's time across your lifespan to do all that you want, and then it changes as you know.
Right. Life is
You
dynamic.
develop and you change, and you should respect who you are then versus who you were when you set your goals, because they change.
They do change. How often do you? I sit down with a big yellow pad and go, okay, all the things I have to do today, because
Yeah.
today is today.
Yeah.
And then for all of our brands and things, I make a 30-day, a 90-day, a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year plan, and I reset that about every month.
Very good.
How do you divide your time? I mean, you're faculty at UCLA
Yes.
and Johns Hopkins.
Yes.
How do you decide, depending on what each faculty is offered? How do you choose which one to give time to, or is it equal, or does it change all the time, or?
Oh, I see. She's a juggler as well.
It goes in phases. So I was full-time at Johns Hopkins and really was working my complete tushy off so that I went from assistant professor to associate professor. And I was the first woman in my department to be promoted from assistant professor to associate professor. And because people didn't do it, it comes at a time when you're working in academia that you need to prove yourself. You need to really hit your targets. And those are about your childbearing years. So it's kind of a dance that you have to do, and then choices. And of course, if you have enough support at home, you can manage it all. I mean, it's manageable. What happened was I fell in love with someone who was in California and wouldn't leave. You know, my husband, Dr. Tony. And so I had to transition.
He's very fall in lovable withable, by the way.
Oh yes, no.
Many would agree with you. So I left Johns Hopkins, and became adjunct faculty there. So I'm still on faculty there at Johns Hopkins, and they will always have my heart, seriously. The work is phenomenal, and the people who are there are just tremendous. It's world-renowned. But to go from there to UCLA,
Right.
and I didn't jump right on the tenure track there at UCLA because I had a second baby and realized that I wanted to spend more time. 1 is a little easier to manage, 2 is a little less easy to manage, and so I slowed down on my academic track to do more mommying, and that's when a lot of my volunteerism came in, and more baking. And then I've amped things up as the girls have gotten older.
Right. How old are the girls now?
Ooh, very old. 15 and 20.
No, they're not.
Yes, one's at UCLA now.
But you're only
Yes.
26. How'd you do
I
that?
mean,
child
thanks.
bride.
I'll drink to that.
Cheers to that.
I'll do anything.
That's amazing. And of course, everybody says to me all the time, "Oh, you're writing a book," but I hear that you're actually writing a book.
Oh yes.
I am. I'm writing a book because I specialize in anxiety disorders, and although I started as a child psychologist, adolescent.
Will you come around every month when I have to open my American Express bill?
Well, now that's a different issue. You need a financial planner for that.
I don't know. Anxieties.
I was an anxious child, and so I specialized in something to help me help myself. I think that's not uncommon, and I realized that as I've grown and treated other people, that there are some pretty common, significant commonalities in what people experience. So it's not to the level where you need to actually have a one-on-one therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but there are practices and strategies that you can implement when you're opening your American Express bill or during the month that you're running it up.
That might be the key.
I think that's true, Ruth. But there are strategies that we can use that I, in fact, have used for myself. They're not necessarily the psychobabble, but it's really for regular people to help themselves. And so I started, the first half is about my experiences, kind of sharing so people understand what's relatable, because a lot of times when you're anxious, you don't share with people
No.
what you're going through. It's a very personal struggle.
Yep.
And so to be kind of revealing in that so that people can connect. And then the second half is the strategies. So yeah, I'm working on that. I'm going to try to rub on you to get productive, but I'm enjoying
I'm
writing.
flattered.
Well, maybe we should put some of our McCartney Smart Book Technology QR codes in your book,
Would love
and link to videos of you, talking about the background behind the strategy. I was 5, I was 6,
Yes.
so that people get a real sense of you. Because I think for somebody like me, who again left school at 15, I don't have any formal education. There's a certain kind of course, a reverence, but there's a certain kind of intimidation that comes with not knowing people like you per se, but I go to a lot of events and stuff, and I never get into conversation with anybody with letters after their name, because I think I'm going to feel like a complete idiot, right? Because I just, I know all the big words,
Yes.
but I've never had a big shocker coming, folks. I've never had a psychiatry session or a psychologist or any of that stuff. I understand the need for it, but it's just a complete mystery world to me. And I think some of the potential readers of a book like yours, again, when they hear the She Built It podcast and when they see you on things like this and media, you make it accessible, which I think is important.
Yes, very.
Especially in these days of so much division and rancor and people who are just frustrated and they don't have an outlet, and it turns to alcoholism or violence or wrong choices or fights in marriages and things. And I think so much of that can be headed off at the pass with a bit of common sense, right?
Yes.
Right.
I think communication is the bottom line, isn't
Good.
it? Talk about.
But even talking within yourself, because we all have these dialogues within ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And
I
some
told
of
her
the
she talks about that.
I do. It literally with my name. I'm like, Michelle, come on, get out of the house.
Oh, no, so do I.
Just take the cookies off the sheet. You got to get to that McCartney.
Down the road.
But it's what we're telling ourselves, because it's so automatic that we're not even registering. If we spoke to ourselves sometimes to another person we loved, using the same language that we talk to ourselves in our heads, we would chastise ourselves.
Yeah.
Because, to hear you, Ruth, say that you have social discomfort among anyone is just, it's almost unbelievable. Because your social facility, your ability to converse, your ability to connect, your ability to relate to people is basically legendary. No, because when we have parties at our house a couple of doors down, we love to have the three of you come and join us, because you enliven, you converse with anyone, and most of the time there are people with at least 2 to 3 degrees that are at our house for parties, and I never knew you had social discomfort.
Yeah, it's one of the things I force myself to do is insert myself, listen first.
Yes.
You can't just yak into a conversation,
Right.
right? Because you never learn anything when your mouth's open. I listen first, and then I think if I've got an anecdote or a story or a way in to the conversation without being, intrusive, then I'll get involved. But I do a lot of at parties. You'll find me a lot in the kitchen washing dishes and helping.
Yes, I have. You have offered to.
Because that's my time away. I just go and stand in a corner, look busy, and then I listen to 6 or 7 conversations going on, and then I choose which one I'll be the least idiotic in. That's I pick my battles,
Very
right?
good. No. Listening to that and having observed you, not knowing that was your strategy, but look how successful it is, right? You have carved your own success.
Works for me.
It really. But the key thing I think that you shared is to start with listen.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how intellectual or how limited you are, if you do not listen to the person you're communicating with, you fail. You fail. You don't.
Right.
Because you have to hear what's being said.
Right.
And too often, when you have a conversation with someone and you ask them, "How are you?" or you say, they automatically have an answer
Yep.
to a question you didn't even ask. So you automatically think, oh, well,
They're not
this person
listening.
is not connected with me. Let me move. You know,
Right.
you don't want to continue with them.
Yep.
So it starts with the listening.
I also learned, I was forced to learn French in school, which I sort of understand, but I'm not really good at. But at 31, I fell in love and moved to Germany and was literally dumped in Bavaria without any German language skills at all. And I put the language together. And so previously to that, I was always kind of the life and soul of the party person.
Yes.
But when you are dumped in a country where you cannot utter a word, it's actually good for the listening part of you, because you have to kind of figure out what everyone's saying.
I'm
and
waiting for a comment from your husband to that remark. Don't say a word.
But sometimes I think people who are bad communicators, I say to them, get like a Babbel or a Berlitz language course in your car on a podcast and thing, because it'll teach you to even if you don't learn the language, it teaches you to shut up and listen.
Very good.
I understand
Very
a lot
good.
of German, but I don't have the confidence to speak it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Ruth, you're a singer, so you
Yeah,
perceive language with a musical note
a different part of the
attached.
brain.
Yes.
So you hear rhythms in language.
Patterns.
Yeah.
I hear
Patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when patterns stop, they mean like, okay, that's the point.
Yeah.
So I'll remember that segment.
yeah.
And as a singer, you have to remember lyrics.
That's right.
So it's the same thing.
That's right. But again, we're all back to communication is the key. And I have, I've learned that even though like I said, I don't have any kind of, not even a college education, but if you're polite and respectful and you listen, you can join any conversation, right?
Yes, right. And speaking of communication, may I just give a wonderful note to Martin, because it was beautiful the way that you were saying things that were not very supportive of yourself, and Martin steps in and says, no, dear, let me remind you
That's right.
of your strengths.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
A little bit of college. Just a wee bit
No,
over here.
he's got a wee bit. But
Wee
then
bit.
they shoved him in the
Been
army,
there.
so that was the end
Been
of
there.
that. But
But see, my point is how your triad works, which is really unusual and highly successful. And it is more for people to come to understand that there's a place, if you each have your lane, and it works because you shine in your lanes, but you also come together and support each other. And
Yeah, I guess we
it is, triads are rarely extremely successful, but yours is phenomenal. So I hope that's book 4 for you.
okay, the
Or
triad.
as they say in my country,
That's
like, it doesn't matter if it's heaven or hell, I go straight to the bar. The reason he lived 30 years with his mother-in-law.
Yes.
Straight to the bar, sir.
You know what he says, Michelle? When I married Ruth, I didn't read the fine print. It said, buy one, get one free.
Get one half off.
It's actually half off. She's
I am shrinking as I go. She's
Yeah.
4'10".
I'm shrinking in height, but not in girth.
No, she's shrinking that way. She's gaining that way.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, or I am.
And her presence and beauty is radiating. So it's all you can do.
Splendid. Yeah.
But yes, no, we're all a product of obviously the things that we do every day and today. But we're also a product of our history and our genetics, and those are some things that you can either be proud of or you can try and fix.
Right.
I was just the keynote speaker and MC at the Women's Red Dress Heart event at the Riverside County, at the Riverside Convention Center last weekend, and about making time for yourself. And if you think you're having a heart attack, don't say I'll do that later. Call 911. Right?
Yeah, I'll deal with that later.
Yeah, right. But so many women do. It's part of what we're made. It's like, oh, well, got to pick so and so up from soccer practice, or I've got cookies in the oven. I'll have a stroke in 40 minutes.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So, but that is again, that's back down to generational stuff and history and training and dogma for women and those kind of things. You come from some very interesting ancestors.
Yes. How about a bit of name dropping?
On a couple. Wait. I'll get those names picked up on the table before I read them. But I mean, so you have both Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings.
Yes.
Where's that on the tree of your life?
So I'm the 7th generation descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings from their first son. And the oral tradition had been carried down all the way over these, over 200 something years. And it had been the kind of family secret for a long time. And right before my father died, he died in 1998, he became very verbal and very present in the media about this relationship, which had been denied vehemently over these years. And we're mostly from Virginia. I was born in France. And we lived in Virginia mostly. And we would go to Monticello, which is Thomas Jefferson's home. And he would just proclaim, where are the references to Sally Hemings? They would deny it and deny the relationship. And right before he died, he said he wanted to be buried there at Monticello.
Yeah.
And he died, and my family, my sister, brother, and mother, decided that I took a vote, and in my absence decided that they wanted me to carry on this tradition. And so I was on Oprah Winfrey Show and CNN and the Today Show and Good Morning
Good Morning America.
Good Morning America,
yeah.
And there's a big spread in Johns Hopkins Magazine from
great.
20 years ago. But there's still some debate that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
But it is in part why I'm so patriotic. It's in part why I believe so much in community service in our great country. I believe in our people, and that we together are greater, and this divisiveness is artificial. And that
temporary.
Yes.
I mean, we have to have enough, and we have to pull together.
Yes.
And make our nation stronger here today and out in the world.
Yeah.
And regain our respect.
Well, not only do the American citizens need us as a bedrock and a brand and a nation, there are so many countries around the world, Ukraine included, that just completely rely on us for stability, security. I just did a big voiceover thing for the was it United Nations, the humanitarian crisis training videos.
Very good.
And good grief, the stuff I learned from that is just like there are 5 different ways to deal with stuff, and we're talking about what sort of Western civilized nations like Ukraine, but we're also talking about Rwanda, developing nations, Cambodia.
Yes.
Yeah.
America can't crumble. We can't collapse. We have to just keep going. And I see you voted today.
I did vote. I have a great pride in that.
Yeah, we do too. I
We
mean,
mailed ours in, and I
We mailed
actually
us
got
in.
an acknowledgement
Oh,
from
very
an
good.
email saying your vote has been received
And
and counted.
Which is
Never
great.
had one of
Yes.
those before.
I don't think we'll get any results. You can't get final results tonight. Do you know what amazes me? On actual presidential election day, they declare a winner, and they haven't voted any of the troops overseas.
Yes.
They haven't counted
counted
any of
mail-in.
the mail-ins.
No.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing. I think the flaws in our system are becoming much more apparent.
Yes.
And there needs to be a concerted effort to do the research on where the strengths and where the weaknesses are, and for voters, for us as Americans, to really require that we make revisions that make fair and justice
Right.
for all.
Yeah.
And it starts at a local level, and is that what pushed you into getting into local politics?
It did. I mean, great segue in terms of, I feel like we have a civic duty. If you want something done well, you have to contribute. And there's the 80-20 rule, right? That
Yes.
80%, 20%, 100% of the work is done by 20% of the people.
Right.
Yeah.
And 80% don't do anything. So if you have complaints about something, or you see a way that you think you can do it better, instead of using your mouth, use your feet and get involved. So yeah, I ran for our local elected office 6 years ago now. I'm in my second term.
And I was very proud to. If she was peeling out the gate to vote, I beat her to it. And I voted for Michelle first in the queue. I was.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so
right,
much.
yeah.
I mean, on the local level,
Yeah.
every vote counts. And we saw in the last presidential election that every vote still counts.
Yes.
So if I appreciate that they're making it much easier to vote, like the mail-in,
the mail-in.
or the drive-by, drive
early
pull-up.
voting.
Yes, the
Yes.
different options. I was in South Carolina, so I went to the University of Virginia for undergraduate and graduate school, and then to the Medical University of South Carolina for my postdoctoral training. And that, in Charleston, South Carolina, I had the hardest time voting that I've ever had. They did not make it easy to vote. And so although we benefit here in California, or at least in Los Angeles, in terms of the ease of voting, I think that we all have to make it consistent,
More
that
seamless.
everyone
Absolutely.
has an easy time voting.
Do you trust
who's eligible.
Do you trust electronics, or do you think there should be a paper backup, or what are your thoughts on that? With all
You know,
this hacking and
This is 2020, and to say that we have to go back to paper ballots would, to me, be a setback. I mean, really, I think that we have their cybersecurity for everything. I mean, Disney doesn't want their movies to get out before they're released. I mean, there are ways to do this. This is the federal government. So we have resources that are at our disposal. We as stakeholders, as individuals, have to demand that those are enacted.
well, and maybe if people are watching all over the country, maybe, you know, like Michelle said, use your feet. Start a ballot initiative.
Yes.
This is what Michael Moore talks about. He's like, the way to get young people to the polls is put something in the book on the ballot that they care about,
Right.
and then they'll go, oh, well, what's all this other stuff?
That's right,
Right.
yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And so if you could, in, you know, the other 49 states say, hey, do you want to go back to your granddad's paper way of doing it, or shall we, you know, MIT it, right?
Yeah.
Then you would get the young people to the polls, and
If they could vote on their phones,
Oh.
Right.
I think they participate.
Right.
Absolutely. Well,
yeah, I couldn't find the app. I didn't vote. I
No.
couldn't find it.
we were watching
Brexit.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely,
The
Brexit.
kids didn't because they're. Where's the app?
Of
Yes,
course,
right.
There's no.
What do you mean? I got to go down to Sweet Shop and go in the back.
Right.
Yeah. No, this is the thing, was because all of the old stodgy farts on Brexit that, you know, unfortunately won, they knew where the polling station was, and it's always right next to a pub, right? But they went out live. Sky News went out live in the streets with a camera in London when the result came in, and they came out like a youth club was letting out. Did you vote today? Well, no, I couldn't find the app in it. I looked in the app store. It's nowhere in it.
Yes. Yes.
So you're absolutely right, because you know this generation lives like right there.
You know, we can think ill of them, or we can think ill of ourselves,
Yes.
right? Because if we know that something is difficult and challenging and
Yeah.
unfamiliar,
That's right.
then it's incumbent upon us
Yes.
to make it familiar.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
you know, for them to understand that it matters. It matters what you do, and they care about some kind of Instagram star, but they don't care
Yeah.
who's going to be our next president. So we have a problem that we are not addressing because we need to educate our younger generations.
Yeah.
I think shows like Between Two Ferns, having political guests are great, and I think that, you know, having the candidates be on the late night shows is great.
Yes.
But that doesn't speak to somebody 17 turning 18
Right.
by November.
Yeah.
You know, we're in messaging, marketing, branding, all of
Yes,
that
you
stuff,
are.
and I often wonder why it isn't being put out in the mass media, the importance of the balance of Congress and the Senate.
Yes. Yes.
And kids, do 17-year-olds know what deadlock in Washington means? It's just become a rote phrase, and nobody says, look, you got 50 senators, 100 Senate seats for 50 states, and you've got, you know, the 500 plus Congress people, but it's taxation by representation, it's the Electoral College. You hear all these things all the time. And if you're 17 and cramming for work and working at, you know, Ralph's bagging groceries, cramming for college, you don't know what all that means.
Well,
It's
you know,
amazing to me that nobody's simplified it
Right.
into
Yes.
hashtags
Yes.
Right.
almost.
Right. So, you know, when you're speaking, I'm thinking of the Snoopy's, the Peanuts
Yeah.
cartoon, and
Yeah.
how the adults would get on and talk, and all you hear is
Blah, 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 blah.
That's all they hear.
Yes.
But there are ways to market. The Rock the Vote, back
Yes.
when the MTV was doing
That's
that,
right.
Rock the Vote,
Yes,
that was
sure.
very successful.
Yeah.
Right.
It is connection. I mean, what we started talking about is communication.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help if you're speaking a language, so you had to learn
German.
very
German.
quickly.
Yeah.
You know, muddled through French. You know, if you're speaking these different languages,
Yeah.
it matters not what you're saying,
No.
because they don't hear it.
No, that's
So
right.
we need to
Sure.
really
Yeah.
understand what developmentally at a young adult's age,
Yeah.
what's going to appeal to them so that they understand that this
Exactly.
matters to them.
You know, I have a crazy sort of, because everybody lives on Instagram in that world. if somebody, whether it was a nonpartisan group, created a series of infographics
Yes.
with the chairs
Right.
in Senate and said,
Right.
if you got this many blue and that many red, the red
Right.
laws are going to go through. If you got this in the House, if you've got this many red and that many blue, the red things are going
Right.
to get. Because I think unless you show it to people visually now,
Yeah.
No.
they just don't listen.
Don't listen.
No. So put it with the red chairs and the blue chairs and say, okay, if you voted, hypothetically, you could get the drinking age to be lowered from 21 to 18. Something
Yes,
that makes them
exactly.
care about.
This,
Well,
well, this is why the legalized marijuana votes had so much more buy-in
Yeah.
and so many more votes, and it brought people to the polls. But now that that's legal in a lot of states, I think Michael Moore is right. We need to find the next thing that moves that generation into civics and understand listening, and then picking up on, oh, well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Right.
What does this mean? What does that
Yeah.
mean?
But when people feel empowered, they do something different.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
really what our She Built It podcast with Melanie and Dr. Michele really is about, empowering our listeners to make career and life and community leaps. So we have dynamic, engaging, very successful women talking about their lives and ways and what's worked for them to make changes. So what we maybe need to do is to do the same for our young people.
Yes.
And have a similar kind of dialogue,
Content stream.
Yes.
content, community
Yeah.
that they can connect to, that
Exactly.
they can identify with authentic people who actually care. And that's what I feel makes change, is that
Yes.
people recognizing that you truly care about them and their well-being,
Yes.
and give them a path that is easy to get on,
Right.
so that they can make those changes.
And I think the only good, because we don't discuss politics in general. We discuss it in general, but not
Yeah, but we
specifics.
discuss politics with a European eye.
Yes, but
And
I mean,
we have been used to multi-party situations.
Right, so-
what the problem is, you have two parties. No, you need three or
Right.
four
I mean,
or five.
imagine if
Yeah.
every restaurant in America only served chicken or fish.
Yeah.
No tofu, no steak, no lamb.
No shrimp, no
right.
salmon.
No
So, and
cookies,
that's
no
what-
beans
that-
on toast,
No vodka.
no vodka, no fish fingers. Yeah.
But that's kind of the situation. That's the political menu choice
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And if
But
you,
there's a split coming
Yes,
within the
but-
Democrats. You
Yes,
have
I
the
think-
socialist Democratic Party, like we have in Germany, would split off of the main Democratic
but we
Party.
still need a green bunch of seats and a yellow bunch of seats
Yeah,
and a
exactly.
purple bunch of seats,
Yeah.
and right.
Because what will happen is you need a coalition to rule.
yes,
Yes.
which
So
is the
in some
consensus, right?
cases, the arch Republicans would side with the Green Party in Germany to get, okay, we'll cut emissions, we get that.
Yeah,
But you need to give us the freeway.
it's not.
So-
it's not a best of both worlds. It's a best of 14 worlds. I
Yeah.
think there are 14 parties in
Oh,
Germany.
my.
Do
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think we'll get there. I don't know if it'll be in my lifetime, but at least we have younger people like Beto O'Rourke and Mayor Pete running. And I'm not endorsing either of them, but at the same time, it gets people of their generation, their age, going, huh?
Yeah.
Someone who
Right.
kind of looks like he could be my older brother instead of my granddad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
it is about making people invest in the system, and that starts early. And the hard part is when it is so contentious that good people think twice, 3 times, 5 times about, do I want to be a part of that?
Yeah.
And so that, I think, makes it a little more difficult, and you have to really help them recognize that it is the end goal that makes it worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you have to walk through some briar patches, or as you're fond of saying, some crap, to
Exactly.
to
We
get
got that,
there,
Dave.
then it's worth it.
We got a doctor to say
We got
crap.
our guest to say crap
Everything.
day.
All
Well,
right, that was...
tell everybody where they can find you and,
Yes.
and subscribe and download your
Great.
She Built It podcast.
Yes, well, please do. It's the She Built It podcast with Melanie and Dr. Michele. And we are on everywhere you get a podcast, Apple, iTunes, and Google, and Liberated Syndication, and iHeartRadio. We're everywhere. But when you please subscribe and also download your episodes so we know you're listening. I'm also on Instagram at dr.michelle.com.
Dr.Michele.
Yes, Dr.Michelle, and my website is dr-michelle.com.
Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful.
Such a pleasure. You guys do this every week, and I'm
Every
like,
Tuesday.
I know that you're so. there's comfort in knowing such genius is taking place just down the street.
And by the way, I'm what they call friend rating now. If there are any of your fabulous lady guests on She Built It that you think would love to speak to our
Yes, of course.
global audience,
Yes, yes,
please
yes.
send them our way.
I'd be glad to.
We love fascinating folks, and especially if they have indoor plumbing. They're ladies.
On that happy note,
On that happy note.
can we get a close up and say goodbye?
Bye, kids. Thanks for
for
tuning
joining
in.
us.
See you
Cheerio.
next week.